Hey there, my friend. This is Dave Wood, and I'm sitting here with one of my best friends in the whole world, Chris Rocheleau. Good to see you, Chris. And we're chilling out here in Escazú, Costa Rica. Chris came down to visit me here this last week, and we were just talking. We are like, let's do a video and let's talk about what you're doing and I don't know, some of your top secret ad ninjutsu, if we will.
Sure. I think one of the big things that, and we were talking a little bit about this throughout the week we were here, was how things have shifted so much.
Yeah.
Like funny enough, one of the biggest things I hear a lot is business owners will come to me and say, what we were doing was working and now it's not. Right. What we were doing in our emails used to work. Now they're not so responsive. What we did in our ads just don't seem to give us the returns anymore. And a lot of people will blame that on technical changes, but the interesting thing about that, as I've noticed, is there's been like a real sea change, a shift. And that's where we've come in to help people, is essentially updating their messages and their updating their marketing. There's been a shift ever since, the pandemic, that people are just getting into online internet marketing and all the different aspects of it at such a larger rate that it's become like this mass consciousness understanding. And so because of that, the messages that used to work don't, because you have 10 other competitors basically repeating the same thing you do all the time. And so you have to find a way to differentiate much more specifically than you used to. So oftentimes, like what we just did recently, is a large software company was having an event, and Right. They couldn't get tickets sold because, when you look at it, it's like, oh, they've been saying the same thing for years, right? And so we had to go in and rearrange everything and redo the messaging strategy and figure out some differentiation and get specific on things and look around the landscape and understand how to look at what the competition is doing. Because oftentimes what you see most people do when they get started is they just copy what they see. They see another ad in their industry and they just copy it. Instead of just thinking, oh, well, it's running, it must work, so let me just rip them off and copy them. And in fact, you have a large percentage of ads, like actually only 10, maybe 15% of ads actually produce any type of measurable return.
Right.
And so you have like the blind leading the blind, and this perpetuation of everybody repeating things.
Right.
But they don't ever think about, well, let me get one step ahead of my competition by thinking about that. And so We've been doing that with events, we've been doing that with ads, with landing pages, sales pages, any type of marketing, is understanding how to differentiate and formulate unique mechanisms and different angles. And not just trying to think about new angles, but literally understanding, like, what do other people understand about your solutions? And then to be able to differentiate and show how we are different, and that your solution doesn't have the same problems as other solutions that solve the same problem are.
Right, right. So the main thing that is somebody needs to be able to get across in their advertising today is how they're differentiated from the sea of voices that are clamoring for their prospects' attention, essentially. So what else is important for a business owner to be able to get results in the Facebook ad space right now? We talked about differentiation and making sure that you're standing out from the sea, but talk about other important things, or how to create differentiation. Maybe give some examples.
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things is our messaging system is geared towards finding unique ways to essentially say a lot of the same things. But the most common thing you actually see is problem solution marketing. Essentially says, you got a problem, we have a solution for it, get it here, right? And the issue with that is, what we have learned is people have to understand more of the pains instead of the problems. And that's actually a difference that a lot of
What's the difference? Like pain, problem?
So the problem is the thing that causes the pain. So you could look at it as the root cause oftentimes, right?
So problem causes pain.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of the progression. And a lot of people, a lot of business owners that don't know marketing, they come to us and they're like, are you suffering from problem? And whatever that specific problem is. And about less than half the time, someone really understands their problem. But most of the time, they actually don't. Because
so you're talking about the customer, they don't understand what their problem is.
Yeah,
like they have a problem, but they're like they can't put their finger on it.
So here's a good example. I would say to someone, what's the problem? And they say, I'm not getting any leads. I'm like, well, that's not the problem. That's the pain you're experiencing. But the problem is you don't know how to do a proper ad, or you don't know how to do a proper lead magnet, or the way to get someone to opt in. The actual root cause of that is the lack of
So pain is I have no leads. Problem is I don't know how to generate leads.
correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's a major difference that happens oftentimes is people talk about problems, but people don't respond to problems so much because they understand the problem less than half the time. It's like the pain is what people respond to. It's the same thing with the solution. Like, oh, you need a chiropractor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the solution. But what do you really want? You want to be pain-free.
Yeah, you want a back that feels good.
Yeah, that's the benefit. That's the difference in the solution. The thing that people get so mixed up all the time is they're talking about problems and solutions, which people mildly respond to if they understand it, instead of the pains, which is the real things they don't want, and the real things they want from the solution. So you got to go, problem and solution, but then go pain, benefit, and use those.
So go to the pain and the benefit, which is branched out from problem and solution.
And most of the time, just using those two, you still can understand the core problem that's happening.
Right.
And there are times where something may be more like a diagnosis, which is in between root cause and pain, something like cancer or leaky gut diagnosis, right? And if the diagnosis is understood, then the pains associated with it are automatically understood. So it's okay to say it. But oftentimes, people don't really know the root cause of things. Now, consequently, the best way to differentiate yourself from others is to create a narrative that basically says your problem is actually the result of a different root cause than you thought it was. Let me show you the real root cause.
Right.
And people go, okay, well, that kind of eliminates all the other solutions because this is a different problem. So now I'm really focused in on you.
Right. Interesting. Okay, I got it. So basically, it's like these little areas that people can make distinctions where they're separating themselves by speaking directly to what the customer actually has as a pain, not their problem. So their problem is like, I'm not getting leads. Their pain is like the deeper thing. It's like, I don't know how to get leads or something. Or did I reverse those two things?
That's true. Or you're doing something wrong in the cause of it, like you're not lining up the message properly, or you haven't done the proper research to understand.
Right. So part of then the way of advertising now is then educating people to where they identify with the correct thing, right? So it's like they don't know what the problem is, so you're educating them so they say, oh yeah, that is my problem. You're right.
That is one awareness level that can happen and does happen pretty often. It's not the only one, but it is one of the ways you can differentiate faster. If you can, in fact, find a different problem or paint the problem in a different light where it seems unique to someone and says, oh, like here's a good example. A lot of people say, like, I'm not getting any success with my ads. I'm like, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing what everybody else is doing. Attention coaches, are you struggling with this problem? And it's like, well, everybody freaking does that. So how do you change that? You have to stop doing those direct call outs. Why? Because they've seen 18 other ads that day that say, attention coaches, are you struggling with this problem?
Right. Yeah. I've just tuned that right out.
And so the way we put our messaging together is essentially accomplishing those other pieces I've showed you about pains and benefits, and then also the things that stop people from moving forward, the constraints, what we call the challenges. So once you have those, you can be unique right away in your newsfeed where someone may have seen 18 other ads, but they see yours and go, oh, I haven't seen it phrased that way today. I haven't seen it phrased that way at all. So our click rates show 2 to 5 times higher than the averages when people come to us. We typically can increase results 2x to 5x on average.
Yeah, so you increase results in what measure? Like just increase sales, or you're talking about conversion rates? Like what all?
So it's a cascading effect mostly, but to simplify it, if you say, okay, all things being equal, my conversion rate is this, this cost is this cost. If I can cut my cost per click in half, that cuts everything in half throughout the funnel.
Right, obviously.
And so that's the thing, people focus so much on their funnels rather than like the beginning of the lead in, because if you can cut that first step in half in terms of the cost, that permeates everything else is half the cost all the way through.
Right.
But in reality, when you do it our way, that's a cascading effect that builds upon itself, and you actually get better conversions because of the context that sets from the beginning. It's better expectations.
How can people find you? How can people find your
codemethodology.com.
Codemethodology.com.
And code is CODE, obviously, and it's an acronym. It stands for Context Optimal Decisive Elements. And
Sounds
these pieces have been validated by one of my partners who is a PhD neuroscientist, evolutionary psychologist. Actually, has 5 degrees. And so he's looked at all these pieces and says, this lines up with what our psychology says about human decision making.
Right.
And so it's validated.
Right. So code, which stands for what again?
Context,
optimal,
decisive elements.
Context optimal decisive elements, and it's codemethodology.com. Code methodology. So you can look it up at code methodology, and learn a little bit about his ad strategy, which it's been impressive because I've seen you take companies and they're struggling to get conversions to a thing where their ads are even profitable, and then you cut their cost by get them half the price or less.
With a handful of times.
Give some final thoughts to our audience wherever they're watching this at, and then we'll kind of wrap it up.
I would say kind of the mindset I go into is most people are looking around and trying to find the latest tactic and technique and strategy. And so they're always looking for that. And what they're doing is they're looking to emulate, model, and copy what other people are doing. And the harder thing to do is to have faith in yourself and say, let me look at those things and then reject them right away and rethink through them to see if I can get to a better place where it works. And I found myself doing that a lot and realizing, oh, people just blindly trust oftentimes what they're taught in training instead of really thinking through it and realizing that for them, they could make it more unique in and of itself, which makes a more unique message, which makes them stand out. So it's really just eliminating the fear of like, am I not on the latest, hottest technique, tactic that everyone else is doing,
Right.
And so it's just a mindset of like, question that, they say that, but okay, let's see if it really works, but don't say, oh my God, this is amazing before you've actually tried it. Which is what a lot of people do, because marketers are really good at knowing how to build belief in somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Chris Rocheleau, thanks for coming out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all on the beaches of the world. Be sure to subscribe to wherever you're watching this video at, and also tune into the next one that'll be coming out soon.